The show.
Hello. Welcome to Kernels of Truth, brought to you by Progress Kentucky. We have a special episode for you. As you folks might know, we tend to go live every Wednesday. This is not a Wednesday. We are doing a special education emergency live stream because of the situation we find ourselves with in Frankfort. If you've been paying attention to the news, you saw that last week the governor vetoed a couple of bills that have a lot to do with public education here in Kentucky. He vetoed SB1 and HB9. So SB1, which contains elements of the teacher gag bills, which were discussed earlier in the legislative session, and the SB1, which came in on its own specifically to change how curriculum are set up and remove the kind of local school-specific councils and put curriculum decisions solely in the hands of the district superintendents. At least that's my understanding of it. Thankfully, you don't have to rely on me for this conversation about public education legislation. We have a panel coming up of wonderful educators, amazing experts in their fields who've been paying close attention to this legislation as well. So, we thought it made a lot of sense as, SB1 included some of these teacher gag bill and kind of free speech and accurate history elements. It really was a kind of sad to watch politicians interject themselves into curriculum setting, making sure that, teachers are forced to teach Ronald Reagan's landmark campaign speech about how government is the problem, right? That was going to have to be on the social studies curriculum, I guess. I don't know why anyone would think watching the GOP supermajority in Frankfurt, they are the folks who should be setting what's being taught to our kids. But so that's SB1. We also have HB9, which is the charter school bill. So as folks might know, charter schools have been allowed legally in Kentucky, but there wasn't a funding mechanism. And now, thanks to HB9, there are ways for public for-profit education corporations to take public education dollars, our tax dollars that go to support public schools, could be siphoned off to go to these for-profit corporations, most of them out of state. It's also very problematic because the politics of HB9. Whenever there's a kind of big group, powerful interest working to get a bill across the finish line that's not necessarily popular, you can see some very shady politics play out. And that's absolutely what's happened with HB9, right? So if people remember back, the sewage bill under the Teacher Pension Act, very, very contentious because it was just ugly and nasty and underhanded. A lot of that same type of political, mechanics happened here. So, the bill originally went to the Education Committee, which of course that makes sense. But it seems like they didn't have the votes to get it across through the Education Committee. So they changed and moved it into a different committee. They then made sure that the primary author of the bill, Representative McCoy, I think, was then put onto this committee that he was not initially on, so he could shepherd the bill through. So really underhanded, doesn't make a lot of sense. But the bill passed the House just by the narrowest of margins. And so that's why we're spending some time on it right now over the weekend, right? So SB1 and HB9, they both passed. They were not overwhelming majorities, even though the GOP do have these kind of overwhelming supermajorities. So there's some contention about both of these bills. And when the governor vetoed them, he made it very clear that he was staying for public education. That is, as somebody who came through public education, he supports ensuring that it's strong and getting stronger, not weakened, which both these bills would do. So that's why we kind of created this, emergency live stream. We've got some just fantastic folks. I want to bring in my co-host Kimberly to kick it off, though. A quick conversation. Kimberly, how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing great, Aaron. Just kind of recovering from Friday night, the window
Oh,
for
yes.
dinner.
The
Yes.
Wendell Ford dinner. If folks missed this, it is the political to do of the season. Kimberly played a kind of an MC role for some of it, or
No, I was on the committee and I was over the silent auction. And yes, I did have an opportunity to have the microphone for a second.
Yeah. Well, of course, if they're running a good event, they're going to want to have you rock the mic a bit. I hear there were lips were flapping though, because there was a very big hug. The governor hugged you, and maybe people started chatting about what was going on here and why is Kimberly getting hugged by the governor.
Right, because he gave me like a big bear hug, and I've known him for a lot of years through his father, our former governor, Steve Bashir, he was a very good governor as well. So Andy was there. He had the greatest time. He loves just being around his people, which is us. And he just loves talking to people, hugging people, listening to people. And he gave a dynamic speech at the dinner. It was awesome. I mean, many a times we stood up doing standing ovations for him because he has accomplished a lot. And he is very concerned right now about education. He did speak about that in his speech Friday night. So this is something that's near and dear to his heart. And he also understands, our governor does, that education is at the heart of everything for everyone and every Kentuckian. So yeah, we were impressed with them as usual.
Of course. Yeah. And a lot of folks really do like Andy. As much as this is I still say it's a deeply red state. And you look at the kind of numbers from the most recent election, and it kind of bears that out. But people really like Andy, and they get that he's working really hard every day for us. And he's not doing it for special interest. He's not doing it for ideological interest. He's doing it because he wants, the best for our Commonwealth. And so, yeah, we want to have his back, right? So he's vetoed a number of bills. Some of them, he's doing it for the right reasons, but there's just no way we're going to be able to uphold the veto because the numbers are so overwhelming in that GOP supermajority led House and Senate in Frankfurt. But for both these bills, SB1 and primarily HB9, there's hope that we could absolutely shift enough votes. We can educate enough of our lawmakers and our neighbors, right? So that's the real, I think, issue here, is that people don't pay attention to Frankfurt. I mean, why would they? It's a mess. It's hard to get very excited about what's happening there. But if enough of us say, hey, that's not right, that's not why we sent you guys to Frankfurt to represent us. And I think, taking public school funds, which we know are in short supply and are always in short supply, to give them to, private for-profit out-of-state education companies, without a lot of accountability, it just seems like a horrible idea, and that we should not, of course, be gagging our teachers about how they talk about it, history, how they talk about, current events. And so, yeah, we are, don't take it from Kimberly and I. We're passionate, we're well-intentioned, but we're not educators. We're not teachers. We're not experts in the field on this stuff. We do have with us, though, we've got Teacher of the Year, Willie Carver, who is back on the show, which we're very excited about. We've got Christina Trosper with Kentucky 120 United. I always get those wrong, but she is an awesome teacher who's been on in the past to actually talk about the kind of earlier forms of this legislation. And then we were joined also by Kevin Dailey, who is an award-winning educator. He has won the Milken Teaching Award for Kentucky, which is a national program that awards amazing teachers in each state, and he won the Kentucky version of that. And then really excited that we have got Connor Flick, who's with the Kentucky Student Voice team. So a student who's going to see the kind of impact of this stuff directly as well. So thanks everybody for joining us this evening. A couple quick housekeeping comments. Please share out the show. We want to make sure as many people as possible see what we're talking about, hear about SB1 and HB9. So wherever you are on social media, whether it's YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, please go ahead and share that stuff out so we can get as many people as possible in the conversation. This will also be a podcast later, so we'll share that out as well. So again, thanks everybody. I'm going to turn to Willie, who because he's Teacher of the Year. He gets to wear that crown and gets first chance to kind of weigh in on this legislation and kind of why he's concerned about what they're doing in Frankfort.
My big issue is that I think these are two sides to the same coin when we're talking about SB1, when we're talking about House Bill. What they're both doing is frankly not conservative, frankly not liberal. I don't know what it is other than special interest, because it takes power, it takes voice, takes money away from local parents and gives it to larger boards. That really concerns me, because I think now more than ever, the teachers want good relationships with parents. We believe in our communities, and this is going to make it impossible for us to work together. So just looking at, say, SB1 first, if I want to create curriculum, I do that. I have to then go through my PLC committee. Once it goes through them, then I have to go to site-based. Then a committee made of parents has to decide if it's okay. Then I can actually teach it. And that's all has to be standards-based. Compare this to what might happen under SB1, in which a single human being, a superintendent, gets to decide all of this. It's frightening for the parents mostly, because they deserve to have that choice. House Bill 9 takes that and makes it look like local control, because it takes all the voice, all the power, and a lot of the money, and then gives it to potentially out-of-state organizations, as long as they're somehow working in name in the state of Kentucky.
So that definitely seems, it seems like kind of the political forces that were kind of at work here, right? We knew that charter schools were definitely something that, there's been an effort in the past to kind of open up the program or the state for those programs to kind of come in the past. I mentioned before that they didn't really have a clear funding mechanism. There was this tax credit thing that seemed, problematic for sure. But what are you guys experiencing as teachers in terms of funding already, right? So what is it like to be a teacher, with the current funding that you're experiencing? And let's turn to Christina to get her experience about that.
So I'm in rural Kentucky. As you can see, I have my shirt that says "Support Appalachian Artists," because I'm from Appalachia, born and raised in Knox County. The biggest thing that I see is, I could go into teacher land and just inundate you all with statistics, but I can give you one statistic. In our rural counties, and I think any county really, in any school district, I was talking to my superintendent, and I did not know that our district runs in the red every year, $1 million in our transportation budget. So they have to take $1 million out of our general fund every year to allocate that towards transportation. And, I've spoke to our local representative about it. I've spoke to other people. And what I'm seeing happening is, last year, all these parents and these let them learn groups and let them play groups, is all that student mental health. Let's worry about their mental health. These kids are suffering. But when we say we need funding for that, I can't just do that in my, world history class. Then we're just being, we're being babies and we're being whiny and just throwing too much money at the problem. I think the biggest issue is that the Kentucky GOP, let's just be honest, and Mitch McConnell, who we know controls the Kentucky GOP, is completely fighting some strange culture war at the expense of our students. So I look at what was said about HB9, the things that were said about HB9, the things when they kept saying urban, we all know what they meant. We know exactly what they meant. That wasn't even a dog whistle. And you're going to sit, because I remember when the first charter bill went through, me and Regina Huff, who's the representative in Whitley County, who was the sponsor of that bill, I let her have it. She said, oh, it won't affect us. She says urban kids. And I was like, are you using urban instead of black? Because I feel like that's what you're trying to say. So she was, appealing to people's, racist tendencies. Let's just be 100% honest. I mean, that's all there is to it. And to say that we are failing students when none of those people that I've ever seen ever came in my classroom and see what I deal with on a daily basis. The amount of students that I see that are, inundated with sexual abuse and physical abuse and neglect. We had kids a couple of years ago. We couldn't figure out why they weren't coming to school. We found out they were sleeping in barns. They had ran away, and him and his sister were sleeping in barns and sleeping in fields. But yet somehow charter schools are going to help that. No, they're not. And so I don't have a problem with a charter school. If you want to open a charter school, you have at it. But you're not using my taxpayer money when the kids that I'm servicing right now can't get their needs met. And They want to punish Jefferson County all the time. Let's be honest. SB1 was about Jefferson County. It was about them being able to choose the principal, about Marty Polio being able to choose the principals, and about the curriculum. That's all I heard was, well, there's a problem in Jefferson County. And I hate to break it to everybody, but there's 171 other school districts in this state. So all of these things that are done, it's done. They think they're punishing adults, but they're punishing our kids. They're selling our kids to the highest bidder. You look at the breakdown of the vote of HB9, and Eastern Kentucky did not vote for HB9. Absolutely not. And the reason why is because they recognize that the number one employer in their counties are their schools. They understand how bad that this is for rural counties. And it's bad for everybody, let's just be honest. But for some reason, you look over in Western Kentucky, and they all voted for it, which leads me to believe there's been some sort of promise, some sort of kickback to those Western counties, those representatives. That makes no sense. If it was about a rural versus urban issue, you would have saw every rural county vote the same, but they didn't. And they were Republicans. Like my representative, can we just talk about how he's been to prison, the last time he was representative, and, for selling, selling pardons, he legit went to prison for that. But this whole idea is all a culture war. When we talk about Senate Bill 1 about the curriculum, that's just a way for them to say, we don't want them teaching CRT. You have no idea what that is. Second of all, you look at the whole issue they put in there about the teacher gag bills. Then you put in this about charter schools, that public schools are failing our kids. It's all a culture war. It is not about our students. It's about trying to pit people against each other, trying to pit rural and urban against each other, and then trying to pit the community against teachers. And it's a national issue. It's not just a Kentucky issue, and it is absolutely disgusting. Sorry.
No, I concur completely. And I think, you nailed it, right? This is Kentucky getting involved with the culture wars out of Frankfort. And of course, there's a lot of, a lot of attention around the teacher gag bills that kind of made it harder for them to move forward. So they kind of snuck it into SB1, right? They kind of modified it a bit and then put it into SB1, which again, SB1, which means it's the first bill. The most important bill for the Senate to move was SB1, which, again, initially it was like, let's take away local community control and give it to the superintendent because they're a little bit more of a kind of political animal and we think we can influence them. It's just very odd that was their priority, right? Mm-hmm. But, I think it's not necessarily in keeping with the ideology of Republicans, theoretically, right? Because what's more local than your local school, and the parents and the teachers kind of coming together to do something. But whatever.
The reason why they wanted to impeach Andy last year was about local control, about, these states of emergency and stuff. And so the whole party that was screaming local control is now giving away all control, at the local level, centralizing it with one person, which goes completely against any good policy or anything that you want to do for your local communities. You have to have as many stakeholders involved as you can get. And when you start limiting who those people are that can contribute, that's the issue.
And to jump in, this is what annoys me and angers me, frankly. It's that there are good well-meaning people in my family in Eastern Kentucky, and I see the things that they post and what they think this means. They think they're going to get private religious school for their kids and things like this. And what upsets me is they're using this anger over what has gone on in COVID to push something that is the exact opposite. No one's getting free religious school. And frankly, all of the people who I know who are posting would not have the transportation in Floyd County to send their kids to whatever bougie charter school might get built for the rich kids living in Prestonsburg. So
That's a good
it is a moot point, and they're using anger and trying. I don't know the people who are communicating about these things, right? Anger is being stoked against people who need the most help. And that's what infuriates me, because it's
Well, you look at Kim Banta.
Right. All right. So I'm gonna put a pin in that one for a minute. I do. Yeah, I think that's a very interesting lawmaker to discuss, because there's been some issues there. But I want to bring in Connor Flick, because we should hear from the student perspective as well. Connor's with the Kentucky Student Voice team. And part of the team that's been looking at these issues. I want to just get his take on kind of SB1 HB9, kind of where you kind of come into this discussion, and what has you most concerned about this legislative agenda?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm going to do, I'm not in a position to talk about politics, and I'm not in a position to talk about ideology here. I want to talk about facts a little bit. And here's some things that we know about these bills and what we know about Kentucky students. We know that Kentucky students are having conversations about race. They're having conversations about racism, whether or not we're introducing them into the classroom or not. And what's happening a lot with those conversations is that sometimes they can go to some really dark places. We had a lot of students, when we released a survey and we did our studies, we found a lot of students, especially students of colors, reporting that they were being targeted, that they had slurs used against them. They're having conversations about race, and sometimes it's not pretty. And sometimes we need to really ask ourselves, what are we teaching in our classrooms? What are we teaching when we go into our social studies classrooms? What are we telling our students is okay? And we need to make sure that we're not stifling that conversations for our teachers. We need to make sure that we're having those open discussions and making sure that students aren't growing up to be racist, and that they have challenges to their opinion, whether they're coming from one side or the other, that they have challenges to what they believe, they have challenges to their opinion, and that they can critically think, and that they can really think about social issues and about race and about the world that they live in, and really examine and analyze it. And so what we're seeing with SB1, especially with a lot of curriculum dictating, is that we're seeing a lot of movement away from that. And we're seeing a lot of very specific targeted pushes for students to be kind of pushed into one ideology and pushed into one kind of thought process, and kind of pushed into reading these certain things without necessarily critiquing what they are. And those things can be really, really concerning, especially because we know so many teachers already are introducing primary source documents into their classrooms. They're using hundreds of documents in a semester. They're really trying and really, really working to make sure that they're doing the best social studies curriculum that they can. And this bill is the first step to trying to negate those things and trying to very much dictate from a top-down level without the input of parents, teachers, or students of what's going on. We also see with the SBDMs, the other part of SB1 is we see a real push away from not only not letting teachers and not letting parents have local control over their schools and what's in that curriculum, but we also see that Kentucky Department of Education only a year ago introduced new mechanisms and easier mechanisms to allow students onto these SBDMs. But at the same time, we see these bills coming through that's trying to get the power of these SBDMs and make sure that students can't get these voting positions, they can't get roles that matter within their schools, and they can't exert their own control, and they can't exert their own voice over what's going on day to day in these classrooms, despite the fact that they're spending 40 hours a day, and they're the primary stakeholders, and they're the ones being affected by these bills, and they're the ones being affected by this education. We also see with HB9, if you look at the research, if you look at the data, if you look at education gaps, charter schools do nothing to help those whatsoever. There is no consistent data showing that charter schools, by and large, and especially in rural communities, have any sort of tangible impact that improves student outcomes, that improves student education, that has a better school climate, that makes schools more welcoming and open, and provides a better education to students across all grades. You're just not seeing that happen. And oftentimes these charter schools end up more advantaged and more privileged students, and less of the rural ones, and less of the ones that it's actually supposed to serve, and actually supposed to help, and actually supposed to boost and innovate and bolster. And so we see the charter schools model come up without accountability, especially in HB9. And it causes a lot of concerns, because there's this big concern of this money moving away from already underfunded schools, traveling with students into these charter schools, and causing lessened educational outcomes and increasing the gaps both for students that are going to these charter schools and students that are going to underfunded public schools at the same time. So there's a lot of concern around these issues, and we're really trying to push back against that as students, because we see the power being taken away from us. We see what this is doing to our education. We see the impacts that this is having, and we're living through it day by day. And it's causing a lot of concern because we don't know what this is going to do for our future.
Right. Connor, thank you for putting that out so very eloquently, so very well. So you're a student, though? You are actually a high school student right now?
Yes, so I'm a high school student. I'm 18. I'm in my senior year. I'm about to graduate here in a month. I go to Connor High School. I also dually attend at Western Kentucky University. So I'm a little bit all over the place sometimes, but I'm still in high school. I'm still living through this experience. I'm in these classrooms day by day for 8 hours a day. I just got out of school a couple hours ago to where I was doing some setup for a different program that I had after school. So it is a busy process, and I'm so glad I could be here with y'all. But I'm still a student. I'm still here in it with y'all.
That's great. I appreciate you joining us in a busy weekend. Please do, as you heard earlier, there's some concern about Western Kentucky and why folks, kind of voted the way they did. So anything you can do to share the word, especially your word, I feel like you can be very compelling from a student perspective as to why you are concerned about these two pieces of legislation. And it does come down to, it's not about underperforming schools and helping them. It's about the rich getting richer. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna say it. Like they want us to pay for their public schools. They really do. And it's like, oh, so the public schools get worse. That's fine, because we'll have our private school that we're all going to with our charter program. And of course, there's no public transportation. We're gonna, we don't care about that, because we're just gonna, make sure that we drive our kids to this school. That, I'm sorry, I'm very cynical about this. I've seen what happens to charter schools. I actually, in New Orleans, where I lived before I moved to Kentucky, charter schools came in after Hurricane Katrina, and by and large, they did not improve the situation for a school district that was absolutely, falling apart and needed help. So I can see why people, chose to try charter schools, because it couldn't have been worse. But unfortunately, it certainly didn't get better. It got different, but it didn't get better. So I did want to pull in, because a lot of what Connor talked about was the kind of social studies and that instruction. And so we were very honored to have Kevin Dailey with us, who is a social studies teacher. Where are you at, Kevin? And what's this award you won?
I'm in Boone County. I won the Milken Educator Award this year, which is a national award for educators who are doing good work. And I feel pretty honored that I was selected for that. But in terms of Senate Bill 1, I think you kind of picked up on this. It's coming from, at least from the public, I think it's coming from a place of concern for their kids when the public is hearing this stuff, because politicians are intelligent. They might be trying to trick you, but they're intelligent, and they use language like personal agency to promote personal agency for students. Well, you can promote personal agency and still acknowledge institutional inequity. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive. You can do those two things at the same time, and that's really what we should be preparing our students to do. If we aren't able to do that, we're leaving them without a skill that they're going to need as soon as they leave that school. I think they're throwing this rhetoric of social studies having to be this ultra patriotic thing. You can love America and want better for it. These are not ideas. They're setting up a false dichotomy that is really damaging, and it comes from a place of partisanship. The CRT bills started January 12th, 6 days after a pretty infamous event, and they start throwing in speeches by Ronald Reagan that must be taught about, there is no left America or right America. There's only one America. Why wouldn't you throw Obama's 2014 keynote in there? Why wouldn't you put that in there? It also talked about uniting America, but it's curious of your choice of a political document. They put in the first 10 amendments, but they don't put in the 13th, 14th, and 15th amendments. That's curious. Why wouldn't you do that? When arguably the 14th Amendment rewrites the Constitution anyway. When you have a list of 24 primary source documents and one is from a female perspective. Are we telling our kids that only one one document in this list of 24 are worth it. 5 are from Black men and 1 are from a group of women. That's not representative of America, in my opinion. I just think they're being sold something that they don't know they're being sold. They use language that is trying to self-promote one ideology, and it's leaving large parts of Kentucky behind. And that's not the Kentucky that we want for our students, any teacher, any parent. And then on top of that, they're removing that ability for us to provide a check against their authority by centralizing power into handpicked candidates that they can put in large districts around the state. So I think these things go together. Charter schools are, I think Connor said it more eloquently than I ever could. And thankfully we have his voice here. There is no evidence that they're going to promote it. And if you want to provide improvements to your schools to reduce the achievement gap, that's the language that they use, provide resources. If you find any evidence for charter schools being effective, it's because they have more resources, private and taxpayer resources combined. We are coming out of a pandemic where mental health is clearly on the minds of every parent, every administrator, and we still can't fund adequate counseling within our schools. We have, why would we want to remove even more funding for that when the problems that we're facing, that our kids are facing, are they're already not being met with funding. So.
Thanks, Kevin. Kimberly, any questions you want to ask our panel?
Yes, just I feel great being in the presence of such esteemed educators, and that makes me feel good. And it makes me feel good that teachers have not given up. I mean, with everything that educators have to go through all over this country, but especially in Kentucky, and the bad rap that our teachers get, it's a wonder that anybody would like to step up or still care or still go into that classroom on a daily basis, especially here in Jefferson County, where it's like every week they find a student with a gun. I mean, it's not just teaching in the classroom anymore. It's also being security, self-defense instructors, and everything else. But as I always say on our show, Aaron, you know, whatever the Republicans do, it does not surprise me. And the reason why our great governor, Andy Beshear, was elected anyway, it was a big chunk of that came from the teachers. I was a deputy field organizer for his campaign, and I'm just telling you, we knocked on some doors, and they loved Trump, but they wanted Andy. And we're hoping that we can keep that same momentum going again. But as far as at the state level, that was something very much that is alarming to all of us. Especially a lot of our state representatives that were talking about it, as well as at the Window 4 dinner Friday night. You know, Aaron, it's always been my belief that they want to keep us dumb, meaning uneducated, keep us sick, and keep us poor. So this just is part of the agenda. And just like not legalizing marijuana or whatever the case may be, only bills passed in this particular legislative sessions here lately is if we can show them how they're going to make money off of it. You can believe a lot of them are going to try to rally up some friends, family, friends of friends to come in here and put charter schools, and they are going to make money off of it. Believe me when I tell you that. It's all in the agenda. And the Republicans in Frankfort, they don't give a damn about the people that are on this show today. I mean, Aaron, these educators are off the chain. They are all that, and put a cherry on top. And, you know, I just wish that they could get paid correctly. I wish that they could go into their classrooms and feel safe all day long, and the students can feel safe. And I pray and I hope that some type of miracle can happen, where things can be again that we are concerned about what our children consume. Back to you, Aaron.
Thank you, Kimberly. So we promised this is going to be a short live stream, so we really do need to wrap it up. I am going to give our esteemed educators and student panel one last chance to say, 30 seconds of what you wanted to wrap up with, and then we're going to send folks on their way with how to take action and how to make sure your voice is heard in this conversation. So we'll just kind of go back through the stack we had before. So Willie, how would you like to close us out?
I've met every single person who's invited here because we were in groups that are advocating. Connor through the Kentucky Student Voice team, who are phenomenal. Kevin, who came to a session at Ed Camp where we talked about how to protect Black students and trans students and gay students in this hyper conservative reality. Christina through work in Kentucky 120 United. The heart of what is keeping Kentucky together is the work that students and teachers are doing outside of the classroom to protect themselves from laws and bills that do not have our interests at heart and have at heart the interests of the mega wealthy.
Absolutely. All right. Christina.
I want to say, first of all, Connor, you are great. Say it's the teacher.
He must have had an amazing teacher, right?
Listen, he thinks critically. You have had some awesome social studies teachers. As a social studies teacher, I say that. I will say that, I try not to be partisan in a lot of things, but it is black and white. I mean, there's no gray that the Kentucky Republican Party is trying to destroy public education. And Kimberly hit it on the head. It is the same thing we said about us going into the coal mines in Eastern Kentucky. They didn't fund us. We used to say they wanted us dumb and desperate enough to go in those coal mines. And it is the exact same thing. And so I urge anyone, please call your legislators, 800-372-7181. I have the number memorized. Tell them to not override the veto for HB9. That will absolutely destroy our public education. And if you know parents who have kids who are athletes, tell them what KHSAA said about how it will destroy sports in the Commonwealth.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's probably the most important one, unfortunately.
Christina, how many votes do we need to flip this?
We had 51 who voted yay. I think we need to flip 2. If we can flip 2 votes, we can get 2 people who voted yes to flip their vote to no. In other words, not to override Andy's veto. Then we can stop HB9. We have been fighting charter schools for 4 years, 5 years. Oh God, long time.
All right, so I'm going to give Connor his chance to kind of leave some closing thoughts from your perspective, the Kentucky Student Voice team and students from around the state.
First of all, thank you to everyone on this panel. Thank you for all the support. Second, you can connect with the Kentucky Student Voice team at ksvt.org if you want to learn more about our work and you want to read our Race to Learn report, which goes very much in depth about how students feel on all of these issues. And then additionally, I also want to point out just really quickly that I want to talk about what this legislative session could have been. We have had so much federal money. We have had so much money accumulated over years and years that has been set aside for education, that has been set aside for great funding, and that has been set aside to fund things like full-day kindergarten, to fund student lunches, to fund full transportation. We've been able to do these things for forever, but we haven't gotten those bills passed yet. We could have had a great session for education. We could have made Kentucky education strong, and we chose not to. And that is something that is a fight that we have to keep continuing, even with these bills getting in the way. We need to keep pushing for more funds. We need to keep paying our teachers more. We need to keep supporting the great people that are on this panel today and make sure that you all have the funding and that our schools have the funding to do the great work that they can do.
Absolutely. It's like the priority was very clear. Like, let's get a big tax cut for the wealthy, and let's make sure that we spend some money, but not nearly as much as Andy wanted, right? So they wanted to fully fund kindergarten or pre-K. They wanted to fully fund transportation, and that, of course, as we heard from Christina, is a big one for a lot of rural school districts as well. All right, so let's give. Kevin. Kevin his chance to close out. Aaron, full disclosure, I got his name wrong earlier and I put it on a graphic and shared it around the interwebs. So I'm sorry about that, Kevin,
Okay.
that I called you the wrong name.
That's okay. I don't know that I can say anything better than any of these previous advocates have said. I will just say, and I think I can speak for everyone here, I absolutely love my Republican students and families, and I absolutely love my Democrat students and families. I don't want anybody out here listening to think that we're at all saying that. We're saying that the people in Frankfort are not representing you. The people representing you and your family and your children, they are the public school teachers that have become professionals who have dedicated their lives to make opportunities for people like me. We all have that story of a public school teacher who helped us get to where we are, and we want to be that person for someone else. We can't do that if we have no funding. We can't do that if we can't put teachers in classrooms, if we can't get teachers in teacher education programs, and if we can't allow teachers and families to be the decision makers rather than politicians and centralized figures.
Oh, that's beautiful, Kevin.
Can't say it better than us.
Yeah, you guys are all fantastic. I want to thank you so much for giving up, part of your Sunday evening. I'm sure you've got lessons plans or something to do.
Spring break, baby. Spring break.
I just
Right.
did my spring break. No.
Yeah, well, giving up some of your spring break, which is even worse. But so thank you so much for being here and for sharing your views and for encouraging people to get involved. We're just sharing, right now, take action. So here's what we're asking you to do. You, as a viewer, you as somebody who cares passionately about public education in Kentucky and knows that it can be better, take action for that bit.ly link right there. You can send an email to your state senator, your state representative, tell them to uphold the governor's vetoes of HB9 and SB1. And that's the first step, right? So that's the super easy. You can do it right now, even though it's like on the weekend and nothing's open. Send the email, it'll get in their inbox. And then what we will do is we send you an auto reply email that includes the phone number to call the legislative comment line, because that is really important. The legislative comment line, which of course, Christina knows, we should all know it. It's 1-800-372-7181. But if you call right now, it's not going to matter because there's no operators on the weekend. So it kicks off at 7 a.m. tomorrow. I believe you can call 7 a.m. all the way to 9 p.m. But you need to call tomorrow and Tuesday to make sure that you send a message to your state senator, your state representative, urge them to uphold the governor's critical education vetoes of these two bills. And then if you want to get, even, more active, engaged, look up the office number for your state, your House representative, right? Because that's where this thing is going to come down. We're probably not going to shift enough votes in the Senate, but in the House, we absolutely could. So you can look up their actual office phone number. The one, their private job. You can look up the one in the Capitol and leave them 2 phone messages, and they are going to then know, holy crap, people are really paying attention to this vote. I might want to rethink, how much the charter companies lobbied and spent on my reelection campaign. So yeah, this is it's a gnarly fight. It's a big fight, but it's a really close one, and it's one we could win. But I'm looking at the numbers right now, and this is a good live stream. We've got 10 plus people watching. You need to go share this with your friends and your neighbors and your family. And as we heard from Christina, Western Kentucky is really important. So if you know folks over there in Warren County, other places, get them to know that this is happening. If you want to share more deep information, we'll have a bunch of links in the show notes, so you can look at this on our blog post or our Facebook page or our podcasting platform. And there's more information that we'll put in here. It's not just these 6 people who care about this issue. Kentucky's Education Commissioner Dr. Jason Glass, sent out a statement around this, calls the opening of charter schools a seismic shift in school governance and operations. Rather than ensuring that quality standards are in place for charter schools and their authorizers, this bill creates a vacuous. Anyone? Vacuous. Yes. He's the education commissioner because he knows the big words. This bill creates a vacuous space ripe for corruption and graft. Mm-hmm. That's the education commissioner. He's not exactly like a hard fire breathing, like partisan. he is like just a doctor who cares about public education for our state. So those are his words. Besides vacuous, it's all very good. And it shows it's really important that folks get involved here. So also the governor has veto letters for both these bills. They're really great. They're not too long. You should read them as well. They're very inspiring and informational. So, we'll put those in the notes as well. So yeah, just do these things. So 3 things. Take the email right now. Go online, send the action alert, make sure that your voice gets in the inbox of your state senator, state representative, and then you'll have in your inbox the phone number and when to call, which is starting at 7 a.m. tomorrow, Monday. Do it through Monday and Tuesday. Maybe on Monday, call the comment line. On Tuesday, call their personal offices to leave that message. And then they come back in on Wednesday. So they're going to have a couple of votes there. So that's we got to watch this. We will pick it up again on Wednesday on our traditional live stream to see kind of where things are. But it's up to us to make a difference. So really, I hope everyone will. And again, thanks. And I think we kept Willie too long. We kept Connor too long. So please go do the important things you have to do. But I appreciate you spending the time with us this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.